Good afternoon, everyone. Aloha. My name is Chuck Parker. I'm the VP of Content here at PBS Hawaiʻi, and I want to thank all of you for joining us from wherever you are. I understand there's folks online from Maui, Honolulu, Kaneohe, Kaimuki here in Hawaii, but also as far away as New Jersey and even someone from Michigan. So thank you all for tuning in. We really appreciate that. For this exclusive event featuring sneak preview of the PBS Hawaiʻi Presents film, Keep It a Secret. The episode you saw today, that you just watched, premieres on broadcast only on Thursday, April 20th at 8:30 p.m. And then again, it'll play on Sunday, April 23rd at 1 p.m. on PBS Hawaiʻi. For those of you joining us from outside, including New Jersey, Michigan, and elsewhere, check with your PBS stations to see for air dates and times and so on, because it's going to vary from around the country. On your screen, you also find a QR code. Please consider a gift to PBS Hawaiʻi. Thanks to viewers like you, your generosity, we can continue to provide free virtual screenings, events, and programs like these. So joining me in this Q&A session is filmmaker Sean Duggan, the mastermind behind what you just saw, Keep It a Secret. Feel free to submit any questions that you folks have thought of through the show or think of through our discussion. We'll try to get to as many of those as we can, but I'm going to start off with maybe the obvious question here. So Sean, are you a surfer?
Yes, I am. I am a surfer, and yeah, the inspiration. And obviously, I'm very stoked to be showing it in Hawaii. The film showed about a year ago at the Maui Film Festival. But yeah, love Hawaii, and I cannot wait to get back to get surfing there.
So tell me now, have you surfed in Ireland with some of the spots you showed us in the film? And I'm going to say, having lived here all my life, the water up there's got to be freezing.
Yeah, it's definitely colder than Hawaii, but it's funny, when I grew up, as in the film indicates, like I grew up in New Jersey, and I was used to surfing also in very cold winters. And the water gets cold, but it really depends where you are in Ireland. The West Coast gets a little bit of the Gulf Stream, so it's like there's a Gulf Stream, but the north, where the Belfast crew surfed, and unbelievably, Alan Duke, we mentioned it, he used to surf up until Christmas without a wetsuit. I don't know how. I literally went down to the coast one day after interviews, and I was freezing, just standing at the edge of the water.
Perhaps he's part polar bear, and that's okay for him.
Yeah, he is. Dirtier.
So what inspired you? Tell us what inspired you to make this film?
Well, when I was kind of thinking of, I was always curious about, I love origin stories as a format, whether it's a book, biography. I love, hearing about how things start. I think there's a certain thread of origin stories that resonates with me about, like, hey, what inspires somebody to get started? So in my mind, I was thinking of, like, maybe coming up with a script, and like I spent summers growing up in Ireland, coming from New Jersey, visiting families, and I knew about the West Coast. I was curious, just my own, what's the story of when did surfing start? And that kind of started me down this road of what I thought was going to be a script, but then eventually, quickly found that there were surfers in the 60s in Ireland. And that kind of all of a sudden put me on the track of going down the documentary route.
So you go down this track for the documentary. So describe some of the challenges you faced, during production. And actually, I'm going to throw in a second question akin to that is, where did you find all that great archival footage, and the still photos, all the imagery from back then?
Well, I mean, some of the challenges, I think making a film, part of it is just keep going. There's a lot of things that, for example, like when I was starting it, we did not have really funding. The real inspiration to get over there was I started this production when I was living in Brooklyn. I live in Los Angeles now, but it's just tracking down some of these folks. Fortuitously, Kevin Cavey, who's literally the last person you see in the film, is he had a self-published book called How Green Was Your Wave. Connected with him, and you know what, after that, it started, I started doing FaceTime calls with like, because I was living in Brooklyn, started doing calls. And that actually was a huge, before Zoom, before COVID, I was doing that because it didn't cost anything to have a chat with somebody. And then, your other question about, so that wasn't one of the challenges is distance, but I got to say technology like this, like me having this conversation with you from Los Angeles, it's amazing how much we can get done from a film production perspective and research remotely now in the connected world. But, when I went over there finally, and what happened was I started researching the film, and quickly, within a couple months, like a few of those interviews, Roger Stedman, who is the British marketing executive, he said, "Hey, listen, there's going to be a big reunion in about 30 days or 60 days. You should come over because everybody will be there." And one of those first sit downs, and when I sat down, Hugh O'Brien Moran, who's the guy who has the cut on his lip,
Yeah.
who
Yeah.
he's a photographer, and his wife is a very prominent photographer, and he's very involved with surf. He literally said, "I heard you were looking for some photos," and he proceeds to hand me a drive with about 300 still images on it. And all of a sudden, I have a ton of stills to work with. So like I had some of those moments where each of the subjects were very generous with their own archival footage to really enable the story to be seen.
Yeah, it's amazing, and thank goodness for them for holding on to that stuff. I mean, sometimes I can be accused of being a pack rat holding on to things, and I'm not sure anything I have is as valuable as what you got for this film. But the fact is, that people do hold on to these things, allows these stories to be told. So, and it sounds like you keep trying, and there you go, it shows up. So that's wonderful. So why is telling this story so important? What's the importance of it to you?
Well, I mean, I liked, I said in the beginning, like, I love an origin story. I think the other unique thing about this story, which resonated to me, was the time of when it was happening. Like when I remember when I first, looked at Kevin Cavey's book of, hey, when it happened, I started seeing like, okay, this was interesting. It was, the story mostly covers 1968 to 72, and that was also just historically, that was when the Ireland of the modern Ireland was coming apart, and the Troubles conflict was really erupting. It was the most violent years of the Troubles conflict. And, I had familiarity of the Troubles and the conflict, from an Irish American perspective. But to me, that was, I would love to get the perspective of what it was like to be an 18-year-old or 22-year-old and get a different lens on it, because I've seen, many of the movies about, the Troubles, but I thought, hey, maybe there might be a way of telling this story in a way that hasn't been told. And it wasn't, the primary plot point of the film, it's more about the two surf camps, but that was always interesting to me. There's a line that Roger Stedman, the British marketing executive, says, and I think that drew me into it. I mean, as a filmmaker, I was like, to have great contrasts is interesting. It's not just, having, hey, this on one side, you have paradise, an unknown surf spot, and the other side, you have a very tragic conflict happening. In those two worlds, how they abut next to themselves was interesting to me. And that was always interesting about the project, having those contrasts.
So what do you want viewers to take away from this film?
I think, if folks can kind of take away, hopefully I've what the things that I took away from it, which, when I started pursuing this, project, and, any project I get involved with is like, at its core, it has to be something that is, hopefully I'm learning on it. And, the things that I did learn on it was, hey, what was the dynamics of, of the two communities, like even my own, like, as much as I grew up in Irish American family, but I knew a good amount about the Troubles, to really have a better understanding that I think, Davy Govan really articulated about like, it's funny, it was really a very civil rights cause that was the trigger. And interesting that you talk about history being connected, that they were really inspired by what was happening in the South and in Selma, which was really interesting to me, that like you're seeing that connectivity of history of civil rights in the US informing, what they were doing in Northern Ireland in 1968.
I just want to let our viewers know, people still with us. We did cut in midstream due to technical difficulties, but we've resolved those. So thank you folks for sticking around with us. So I want to ask another question, Sean. So is there a favorite scene that you shot when you were making this film? Is there a part of it that's your favorite, that's, just stands out, the first thing that comes to mind?
I loved, I like, one of the things I do, it was an accidental scene, but I do really love it. It's that, and I talk about it in the last scene of the film, was like, we were supposed to sit with Kevin that whole that our second time sitting with him. We were supposed to just sit with him in Dublin and try to get more stories, do a longer, like 4 or 5 hour sit down in a chair. But he was like, hey, there's waves on the West Coast, and he goes, let's go surf. And to have this 70, at the time I think 78-year-old saying, hey, you know what, life is too short to just talk about things, let's go surf. And I remember my DP at the time, Laura, being very much, we're really not going to sit down and shoot this guy, we're just going to go. I'm like, I think we should go surf. And so I had a fun doing it. Hey, we may have sacrificed some stories from Kevin, but I love actually the footage we got of him, now, almost 80 years old, the enthusiasm and spark that pulled him into the water as a very young man is still very much burning alive at 78. And I love it. I love that, that the scene that we kind of shot. I used a little bit of my GoPro. We used Laura's footage. I do love that kind of verite scene. We don't have a lot of verite in the film, so I love that too.
Oh, that's cool. So I'm gonna, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe this was your first venture into a feature-length film, and
that's right.
Which is, I mean, impressive, and a huge undertaking. How long actually did it, from sort of inception, if you will, the idea to finished product? How long did that take?
It took about 3 years. It was like, from first idea, first reach out, I'd say, to Kevin, actually, was, and, to completion of the edit, I did put it aside actually for almost 12 months at a time, because I did get to a creative kind of block in it, because I knew, hey, there was this trouble story, and it felt like that I wasn't sure where that belonged. And then I was like, and the other thing I kind of gave myself a pass on, this film didn't need to be 90 minutes. And when I kind of cleared that out, and I said, hey, like, let's just make the two camps of surfers the #1 story, and then we'll weave in context of historical, the Troubles below that as a supporting plot point, it came together pretty quickly. And yeah, then it came out about now about a year and almost a half ago at Belfast, and then premiered here at the DACA NYC Film Festival in New York.
Okay, how did you come up with the name? How far into the process did you come up with that name? Keep it a secret.
The so you know what, it was there was a bunch of working titles that were like that I kind of used a couple of them in the cards when I introduced scenes. Like a working title for a while was Surfing from Trouble. The other one was Wouldn't It Be Nice? I was one, but then maybe I got a little scared I'd get sued by Brian Wilson. So and I probably wouldn't be able to afford the song. But then, you know, when I started seeing that Keep It a Secret was a theme, and it just kind of came, it just kind of fell to me, and I was like, that felt like it's a nice title for it. So that's the way I kind of fell on that one after a few other iterations. I see one question here regarding was the old footage from personal home movies? Yes, there was. We used a combination, but a bunch of that is Duggan archival footage from trips my family did in the 70s, like around circa 78. My first time really being on a plane when I went over there. And then some of that was also, we did use some other archive footage, and you know, most of it was donated though, you know, from subjects though.
And this is kind of a sort of inside baseball question, but what format was it shot on back then?
You know, a bunch of it was 16 millimeter, I think, you know, back then, and some 8mm, I think too. It was a combination. You know, it was definitely one of the challenges of I didn't appreciate the challenge until we got to post-production. I kind of thought we were done, but then luckily worked with a great post-production shop in Brooklyn, New York called Senior Post. Thank you guys if anybody sees this. And what they did was a great job, because hey, we had to conform. Not only we shot on several different cameras, our master interviews, but hey, the archive, we were taking formats over 50 years, you know, and kind of conforming it into a one look and feel. So it was challenging. I think I underestimated the process of getting all that footage conformed into one film. That was a bigger task than I kind of knew what to expect going into that.
So the folks that have the old footage, was it still on that format, this 16mm or 8mm? Then you had to get it digitized, and then, as you say, conform to fit the rest of the new footage, so to speak.
Yeah, some virtually every iteration. Like I remember I didn't actually even meet Kevin Naughton yet. We had just talked on the phone, but had the composer, my brother-in-law, Rich DiCicco of the film, who was also living in LA at the time. I was like, hey, can you go down to Laguna Beach and grab this reel of 16mm film? And Rich literally took it to a post-production shop and had it digitized. And then we brought it back to Kevin. And then like my first time up to Ireland, I just had a scanner with me. And when we weren't talking to people, we were like scanning photos like fiends. We were just like trying to scan as much as we could. And then a few times, and then, you know, some of the beautiful like surf footage that you see that's contemporary was shot by Kevin Smith, you know, in my mind, one of the best cinematographers in surfing period, but also in Ireland. He lives right at the Cliffs of Moher. He did a lot of that shooting on the West Coast. We leveraged a lot of his skills, and I've yet to meet him in person, believe it or not, because we connected during COVID, and you know, I've just connected. We're still connected on WhatsApp. I'll get like surf updates from the west of Ireland from Kevin, and he'll just, you know, send over footage. So yeah, it was an interesting process getting all that footage.
So that leads me to another question then, following what you just said, is having worked with these folks and the folks that help you tell this story, their story, so to speak, do you keep in touch with any of them since then?
You know what? I'm very fortunate that I have. You know, I've you know, I'd say I've kept in touch with most of them, actually. You know, particularly the primary subjects. You know, we've kept in touch. You know, really since some of them came to the screenings for the Belfast screening. You know, had the Belfast crew at the screening, which was really special. It was kind of an interesting, you know, as the filmmaker, you're hoping that the film resonates with an audience, any audience, quite frankly, and but it was an audience within the audience, you know, because they really have not seen what they sat with you several years ago. They don't know what you're going to do with the story, and I think that to me was the most gratifying. We did a screening in Belfast, and the next night we did up at the coast, right next to the in Port Rush, where they make Bushmills whiskey, actually. And it would be a beautiful old Art Deco theater that Davy Gavin is, and to see it resonate, and they felt like, the feedback I've received from the subjects is they felt very positive about, the depiction and the story. I feel very, very humbled by that praise of what how they felt this story. And the other thing, it's as an outsider, because I'm an Irish. I'm a dual citizen, but born in New Jersey. To go to Belfast to tell even a portion of the Troubles story, it can be dicey. This is obviously being in a momentous week, the 25th anniversary of the Good Friday Agreement. To hear feedback that that are from like the Guardian, the paper of Belfast, writing up positively about the depiction of the Troubles in there. I give credit to not myself, but the stories as it was related to me by the subjects, and I hopefully just kind of recorded it the way they saw it.
Well, actually, you answered one of my next questions was, did this get any, how they said, did it get any press? But if the Guardian wrote a story on it, that's saying a lot, so congratulations.
Yeah, it was great. Yeah, I was very, for as a small independent film, I didn't, I kind of, as a producer also, I didn't have the resources to hire a PR firm. So you're talking to the PR firm. I was hoping that we'd get some coverage. I've been delighted that the film has gotten the coverage that it has, which has been great. And to be talking to you and PBS Hawaiʻi, I am absolutely stoked that it's going to be shown next week. There is just awesome.
So is there anything, looking back on the whole project, everything you went through, is there anything you do differently?
It's a fair question. I think, when you go through the process, and wearing both hats, you're kind of like, when I started the project, I was just going to be producing it. I had another director attached to it for a moment who, had to step away. I just kind of kept it going, didn't really go in with the thought that I was going to be directing it. I think I would have been happy producing it, and if that director had come through on it. But, I think for whatever reason, it happened turned out that way. And you know what? I think to my benefit, it did, because I learned so much more. I got much more invested in the story. It wouldn't be the film it was without it. I'm not saying better or worse, it would just be different. But the things that I like, for example, like I thought I would get over there more, and the whole production, there was only 2 trips where I actually shot. I actually went to Ireland 3 times, but the other time was with my family, and I was on that creative break where I just sat down, had tea with one of the brothers, the Britton brothers. I didn't shoot a lick that whole time, and one other subject who was not in the film. I think, there's nothing that screams out that I would like to do better. I would have loved to have gotten Kevin surfing, actually, in the end, and instead of walking in. That was a thought to go back to, even another sit down with some of the subjects. But, for what it is, in the end, I was kind of like, you also have to kind of make decisions creatively. Like, these are the cards you're dealt with, and you got to make the best film you can with it. And that kind of just, at a certain point when we were hustling to finish it, to try to get it to submit to Belfast and Doc NYC, I was like, okay, we're just going to kind of wind it up. We were thinking of going back for a little bit more shooting, and I'm like, let's just take what we have and put it together.
Yeah, at some point you said, okay, you could go on and on and on, and you don't really get any more than you need, or you get too much, and then what are you going to do, right?
Yeah.
Right. So, okay, so you're a surfer. You've surfed in Ireland. I'm assuming you've surfed on the East Coast, perhaps, and in LA. This is going to be an odd question. I'm going to throw it out there. What's the difference between the different surfing areas?
Yeah, well, I mean, Hawaii is an embarrassment of riches in terms of,
Okay.
it's like, it really is the mecca in terms of surfing. I think I've surfed, I'm nowhere as nearly as well traveled as some of the people. Most of the subjects I talk to have surfed a lot more places than I have. I think the one thing that I've kind of taken away from it is, it's like, at the end of the day, it's like, hey, I think localism is a big thing in surfing. You can run into local breaks, and like I can be intimidated by certain places. I'm sure there's certain breaks in Hawaii I'd want to stay away from, but it's funny. I've never really, haven't really encountered it heavy in certain places. I think the thing that is a recurring theme is, it's a theme of surfers, and there's going to be controversy about the film in that regard. It's like, I'm blowing secret spots, I'm shining a light on it, and it's the desire to keep things to themselves, keep it insular. I think that's a common thread wherever you go. But my experience as a surfer has been, when you get right down to it, if you are respectful and you don't take over a break and kind of just show respect, you will be welcomed. That's been my experience when I've surfed in Kauai, Maui, and Oahu. I haven't surfed North Shore. I don't think I have the talent, quite frankly, for it. But I hope to get back to Oahu soon, and some of the other islands.
Well, definitely look us up when you get here. But so what's next? What's your next project?
So I'm starting work on, actually I've been talking and been approached to develop this into a scripted potential TV show, potentially. So I'm starting early work on that in terms of production. The one thing that you come across in, there are so many stories and characters that are never seen, either because they passed away or we have no footage of them. You can't really tell that story unless you can show it. Like in a scripted series or theatrical film, scripted film, you could do that. So I'm kind of exploring that. And then I'm also starting a few ideas, some scripted ideas, potentially another Irish story, but maybe adapting an Irish play. And then another a doc idea, which I'm literally talking to a reporter, which would, potentially keep me in the sports realm, but into hockey and the Czech Republic. So a few just disparate ideas, but I'm very kind of now excited to get on and get into these next ideas.
Oh, sounds interesting. So we're getting close to wrapping up here. Any final thoughts for our audience, Sean?
Just thank you for watching the film. Just want to say thank you, Chuck, for all the support and the whole PBS Hawaii team. I'm a big believer in public broadcasting, so please support PBS Hawaii. I will definitely take you up on that. Next time I'm over in Hawaii, I will look you guys up in Oahu. And just thank you for the support, and I hope you enjoy the film, and everyone gets a chance to spread the word next week.
Well, our pleasure. And actually, I wanted to say you said you couldn't get a PR firm, but your personal PR was pretty good, because all you folks still on with us. Sean sent an email saying, "I got this film. What do you think?" And here we are. So sometimes that's the simplest way to do it is the best way to do it. So I want to thank you for that. So this concludes our panel discussion for the day. Thank you all of us for spending the afternoon watching the film and also through our discussion. Again, we're sorry we couldn't get to more questions. PBS Hawaii will be sending all of you who participated today an audience survey through email for your feedback. This helps us continue to improve our screenings and everything we do here. So if you have a moment, please offer your insight and feedback. Then reminder, there's a QR code on the screen. Please consider a gift to PBS Hawaii. Again, thanks to all of you, or people like you. We can continue to do this kind of thing with these kind of screenings at no cost. So to donate, scan the code with your phone. It will take you directly to the donate page on our website. So again, the episode you saw today, the film you saw today, premieres on broadcast on PBS Hawaii on April 20th, 8:30 p.m. And then again on Sunday, April 23rd at 1 p.m. And for those of you outside Hawaii, just check your PBS stations for date and time, and so you can find out where to watch again and let people know about it, because it is worth watching. I would recommend it anybody and everybody, because it's a great film. So on behalf of myself, Chuck Parker, and the rest of the team here at PBS Hawaiʻi, and Sean, mahalo and aloha, and have a great rest of your day.